Welcome to the deep dive.
Today.
We're tackling a request that you sent in.
Okay.
You want to plunge into the world of Rick Beato.
Rick Beato,
Yeah.
that's right. And you know, it's surprising how often even well-known names
I know, right?
get mispronounced.
It's true. All right, so you've provided us with his Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, this isn't just a quick dip in the pool.
Yeah.
This is a full-on scuba session.
Wow, okay.
Rick Beato is way more than just a YouTube guy.
Right.
He's got this whole history in the music biz
Oh, yeah.
that goes back decades.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's fascinating to me is the sheer breadth of his experience. We're talking multi-instrumentalist, producer, educator,
Right.
even author of music theory books.
It's crazy.
And you can really feel that depth in his YouTube content.
Right. It's like he's not just talking about music.
He's done it all.
He's lived it from every angle.
Mm-hmm.
So for those less familiar, where do we even start with Rick Beato?
Well, the Wikipedia article tells us he was born back in 1962.
In Fairport, New York.
Okay.
Grew up in a large family.
Yeah.
Surrounded by music.
Okay, so big family, always music playing.
That's got to have some influence, right? It's like the perfect breeding ground for a musical life.
It certainly is. And you can hear that early exposure in his eclectic taste. Rick Beato's channel covers everything from jazz and blues to rock and even techno.
Wow.
Talk about range.
Speaking of his channel,
Yes.
can we just take a second to acknowledge the over 4.5 million subscribers?
Wow.
I mean, it's massive.
That's huge.
Did he start back in 2015 knowing it would blow up like this?
Apparently not. There's a quote where he jokingly says something like, "No one wants to watch an old guy with white hair on YouTube."
Right.
It just goes to show the power of genuine passion expertise and maybe a little bit of self-deprecating humor.
That's so true. People can spot authenticity a mile away.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to share his opinions either.
Oh, no.
Like, his thoughts on the current state of the music industry are really thought-provoking. Definitely. He's been critical of the over-reliance on technology in music production.
Yeah.
The shift from albums to singles,
Interesting.
and the potential downsides of streaming services. These are important questions about how we create and consume music today.
Right.
And it's refreshing to hear someone with his experience address them head on.
Here's where it gets interesting, though. He doesn't just point out problems.
Right.
He's actively involved in trying to find solutions,
Yeah.
right? Didn't he testify before the Senate about copyright issues on YouTube?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
He's a huge advocate for musicians' rights in the digital age.
Okay, so we've touched on his early life,
Right.
his YouTube success,
Yeah.
and his willingness to speak up about what he believes in.
He's not afraid.
But we haven't even scratched the surface of his actual career yet.
And that's where things get really interesting. Rick Beato's resume is incredibly diverse.
Like ridiculously diverse. Right. I mean, session, musician,
Oh, yeah.
university, lecturer,
Yes.
author,
Yeah.
and even teaching at prestigious places like Berklee College of Music. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. And it speaks to the depth of his understanding of music. This isn't just someone who knows how to play a few instruments.
Right.
This is someone who understands music theory inside and out.
And it seems like he's used that knowledge in every aspect of his career, from producing records to educating the next generation of musicians. So to really get into the nitty-gritty of his work, let's go back to the beginning. We know Rick Beato was born in Fairport, New York,
Right.
the sixth of 7 children. What was his childhood like? Did he grow up surrounded by instruments? Was he, one of those kids who could play a tune on anything you handed him?
You're not far off. His parents weren't musicians themselves, but his mom came from a very musical family. The Wikipedia article mentions there was always music playing in the house, all genres, all eras. So Rick Beato had this immersive musical upbringing even before he picked up an instrument. I'm starting to see where that diverse taste comes from. Exactly. And we're not talking about just passively listening. He started cello at 7 years old.
7? Okay, see, that's dedication right there. At 7, I was still trying to figure out how to rewind a cassette tape without eating it.
Well, music clearly clicked for Rick Beato very early on, and he didn't stop at cello. At 13, he switched to double bass,
Wow.
and then at 14, he picked up the guitar.
The guitar, the instrument that in many ways he's become known for. It's like he was building this multi-instrumental foundation. Did he have formal training for all of this, or was he just naturally gifted?
It seems like a combination. The article mentions he was primarily self-taught on guitar, at first learning by ear.
Okay.
Eventually, he did receive formal training from a neighbor who owned a music store.
Oh, wow.
But those early years were all about raw talent and passion.
That's incredible. Okay, so fast forward a bit. We've got this musically gifted kid who's mastering multiple instruments. What does a young Rick Beato do? Does he ride that wave straight into the music industry, or does he take a more traditional path?
Well, he does go the traditional route, at least in the beginning. He attends Ithaca College, earns a Bachelor of Arts in classical bass, sticking with his roots there.
So he went to college for music. It's interesting, though, that he focused on classical bass. Does that mean his love for jazz guitar came later?
Not necessarily. Remember, we're talking about Rick Beato here, the king of eclectic tastes.
Right.
After Ithaca, he goes on to get his master's degree from the New England Conservatory of Music and Jazz Guitar Studies.
Wow. So he's got this incredible formal education in both classical and jazz. That's not just talent anymore, that's dedication. With that kind of background, the possibilities must have seemed endless. Where does someone even begin their career after something like that?
You're right, the world was his oyster.
Yeah.
And it seems like he explored every corner of it.
Yeah.
Session, musician, playing for other artists, lecturer at universities. He even taught at Berklee College of Music.
Wow.
Which, let's be honest, a bit of a big deal.
It's Berkeley, the Harvard of music schools. Okay, so he's got this crazy resume building, teaching session work. Did he ever have his own band, though? Was he ever front and center writing and performing his own music?
He did.
Yeah.
You know, for someone so accomplished, it's almost easy to miss parts of his career. Like, there he was in the late 90s, part of a band called Billionaire. They even put out 2 albums. It just goes to show there's always more to discover with Rick Beato.
It's true. He's got this whole history that many people might not even be aware of, which I think makes his YouTube journey even more fascinating.
It's true. It's like he had this whole successful career behind the scenes, and then he steps into the spotlight almost accidentally with this YouTube channel.
And what's remarkable is how he uses that platform. It's not just about showcasing his own music. It's about sharing his knowledge and insights with the world. Those What Makes This Song Great videos are a perfect example.
Oh, absolutely. The way he breaks down those iconic songs, explaining the theory, the instrumentation, the production, it's like getting a free masterclass from a music legend.
And he doesn't shy away from the technical stuff either.
Exactly. But he's also able to make it accessible to everyone, regardless of their musical background. You walk away from those videos with a deeper appreciation for the music you love, and maybe even a little bit of envy for his ear.
A little envy is understandable, but, it's his willingness to tackle the tough topics that really sets him apart. We talked about his thoughts on the music industry, but then he went a step further with those copyright issues on YouTube, right? Testifying before the Senate, that's a whole other level of commitment.
It really is.
Yeah.
He could have easily stayed silent, avoided the potential controversy.
Yeah.
But he saw a problem, a system that wasn't working for creators like him, and he used his platform to speak out.
Okay, so for our listener who might not be familiar with the ins and outs of YouTube copyright, can you break down what happened?
Sure. So Rick Beato was using copyrighted music in his videos, which on the surface seems like a recipe for trouble, right?
Right, because copyright law, that's a whole other...
Exactly. But here's the thing. Rick Beato's use of copyrighted material often fell under fair use. He was analyzing these songs, breaking them down for educational purposes.
Which you'd think would be okay, right? Isn't that the whole point of fair use?
In theory, yes.
Yeah.
But in practice, it's a lot more complicated. YouTube's algorithms often flag copyrighted content automatically. And even if your use is deemed fair use later on, you can still get hit with a copyright strike, your video taking down, all that fun stuff.
So it's this frustrating system that can be a nightmare for creators. And Rick Beato found himself caught in the middle of it.
He did. And instead of just accepting it, he decided to do something about it. He testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee back in 2020 when they were reviewing the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. He argued that the system was unfairly skewed towards copyright holders and that there needed to be more clarity and fairness for creators operating under fair use.
So he went from YouTube to the halls of Congress to fight for what he believes in.
That's amazing. It is. And it speaks to his character. He's not afraid to stand up for what he believes is right, even if it ruffles some feathers along the way.
So we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've explored Rick Beato's childhood, his diverse career, his unlikely rise to YouTube fame, his willingness to tackle tough topics, his advocacy for creators' rights. It's clear that there's much more to this old guy with white hair than meets the eye.
Absolutely. Rick Beato is a musician's musician, someone who lives and breathes music, but he's also a passionate educator, a thoughtful critic, and a vocal advocate for positive change in the music industry.
He's a reminder that it's never too late to pursue your passions, to share your knowledge, and to use your voice to make a difference. So for our listener who requested this deep dive, I hope you're as blown away by Rick Beato as we are. And for everyone else, if you haven't already, do yourself a favor and check out his YouTube channel. You might just learn a thing or two about music creativity and standing up for what you believe in. That's our show for today. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating deep dive into the world of Rick Beato. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the music playing.